Good day. Welcome to episode 10 of the podcast. Today, we wanted to talk about the future of work and AI. And there's a lot of marketplace fear out there about AI replacing human jobs. We've heard conversations about so many people will be unemployed that we may need universal basic income to pay people because AI is going to be doing so much of all of the work we do today. And I'd like to pose maybe a reality check or some objective different thoughts on that topic. I do think AI will have a big impact on the future of work on many jobs. I think there's probably two different kinds of automation that I may have talked about before. The first being like just purely automation of a process, so a very routine process that doesn't necessarily require a lot of intelligence, but are a highly repetitive process that can be automated by technology. And we've seen things like ordering systems in a restaurant. You go into a restaurant these days, or as you check in online for your airline, there's not like a lot of intelligent decision making, highly structured, rule-based, repeating a task that used to be done by employees, and companies are trying to pass some of the work that employees have done, pass it back onto the consumer. So I'd say kind of airline check-in, maybe self-checkout at grocery stores. We've seen in some fast food restaurants, they have automated ordering. So that's one type of automation. It has some impact on the future of work. What we're talking about here is more about the next level up from that, which be the automation of decisioning. And so that's the work that Daisy runs into, where we're helping our clients make decisions around complex tasks that are beyond human ability. So selecting the optimal combination of products to promote in retail, for example, or prices. And so typically there's human beings who make those decisions today, using best efforts, doing a lot of repeating what they did in the past. Maybe in the case of retail, vendors, consumer packaged goods companies come forward with funding opportunities to fund promotions that the retail merchants and category managers can select from the available funding, because that's a big part of retail. And so fear is that with AI, if, for example, Daisy comes in and is automating the selection of items to promote and the setting of prices, then what do all the people who do those jobs, what do they do today? Certainly AI can have an impact on people, but I don't believe it necessarily needs to replace people, because the complete job that, for example, a retail merchant does, there's much more than just the rote task of choosing items to promote and setting prices and forecasting demand. There's also the business strategy. And I think AI is really, I think we want to separate the world in two domains. One is the purely human domain. I think the strategy. I think if you're using AI in business, not like you're going to alter your business, core business strategy, core value, your mission statement. AI is not going to come in and say, from a discount retailer, you should now turn into a luxury retailer, or vice versa. AI is not going to tell you that. So the human beings setting the strategy, what do we want to be? What types of promotions do we want to have? Working and understanding the customers, coming up with new and innovative ways to service customers. So all these strategic thoughts are what the people can do. And then the weekly activity, literally making millions of decisions. What's the price on 100,000 items in 400 stores? Doing that, or which of those items should I promote in store or in my flyer or on my website? Or as my insurance claims come in, I have thousands of claims coming in every day. Which one should I pay automatically? Which ones should I send to an adjudicator? Which ones are fraud and not fraud? These decisions are huge volume, millions of comparisons required in the insurance case. So these are computational tasks that are ideally suited to a computer. And a computer, because it can do these millions of computational tasks, looking at all the combinations in retail or making millions of comparisons, that's what's beyond human ability. So if we let the computer do what the computer's good at and take care of these rote tasks that happen every single day, relentlessly, without end, over and over and over again, I think if we were to characterize the nature of that task, that being high volume, relentless, never ending, ongoing, like a hamster on a wheel, are human beings the best equipped to do that task? You think of a person, some days you're more tired than others. Some days you get bored of doing the same thing. Some days you make different decisions than others. Given a very complex environment where you have hundreds of facts, do you have all the same facts at your fingertips every day? I would say the characteristics required: consistency, lots of available information, being super systematic, all of these features are, I think, what's required for that job. That's our belief. The science is, the computers are good at that. High volume decision, complex mathematical operations, the same energy applied every day, day after day after day, the same systematic logic applied day after day after day. Whereas the human beings, it's hard for them to have that same level of consistency. What people are good at is where there's limited information, where there's ambiguity, interacting with other people, creative thought in a new space where there's not a lot of historical information, setting the strategy of a business. I think these are elements of things that computers aren't good at. Computers are good when there's lots of data and computation required, and when there's not a lot of data or there's human interaction required, face-to-face interaction with people. I think that's the way to divide the world. And then ultimately, the technology shouldn't replace people. It may change job roles and take over some of the job tasks that people do today. So I think this is just about re-engineering job tasks. And so creating new jobs that are maybe hybrid, people allowing them to focus on more of the value added tasks today. I think today, if retail merchants are spending 50% of their time doing promotion planning, and we now relieve them of some of that, I don't think we can get rid of all of it because there's always exception handling. So we'll talk about that in a second. But if we take away 40% of the job role, what does that free people up to do? What's the most valuable task that humans can do? Is it setting the strategy and servicing customers, negotiating with your suppliers for funding, looking at the most complex fraud case that's multi-million dollars and spending energy on that, coming up with new business models? Is that more valuable than making a micro decision on one claim or setting one price or 10 prices for the 10 items in your category? So I think if we looked at the world that way, in aggregate, the millions of decisions are highly valuable, but the human beings can make these strategic decisions that are a lot more valuable on a per decision basis. And I think freeing up people, what we call elevating people, elevating them to be the strategists, the decision makers, the objective setters, and the overseers of AI, right? The AI shouldn't just be allowed to run amok and do its own thing. The human being should have the ultimate say and have the approval step. And there are always exceptions. In the case of retail, there may be lack of availability on a product that you planned 4 weeks ago. That's now no longer available. There's a manufacturing glitch in the supply chain, and now the human being has to come in last minute and make an exception. So exception handling would be an example where people still have a role in those detailed tasks, or maybe there's a new claim that's never been seen before, a very difficult outlier that comes to bear, and the technology hasn't seen that type of data. We surface that. We may also have random audit. We don't want to let the computer just continually make decisions if the data or the marketplace is changing. We want to have people continuing the loop so we can see, are there changes happening to the nature of claims that we're reviewing? So there is a role for people in that, and I think that's the human machine interaction. So elevate people to do the most valuable things. In the insurance case, it's look at the most complex claims, the high materiality, high dollar value claims, to adjudicate those, to decide if they're fraud or not. In retail, it's setting the strategy, working out new ways to service the customer, and let the machine do those gory details. But the human is the boss of the AI. The human will always approve the final plan, can approve the decision, or in the case of insurance, as long as it's below the materiality and complexity threshold, we don't necessarily need approval. Where it's above that threshold, but still not enough to have people engaged, we could have the human being be the reviewer and free up some of the time. So I don't think we're talking about huge elimination. I think there's an opportunity to upskill people. So I think it's exciting to work with technology. Maybe as a technology person, I'm biased, but it's certainly exciting to use new technology to see how amazing. I know playing with ChatGPT, which maybe many of you have, it's a lot of fun. I mean, certainly have viewpoints in the technology, but at the end of the day, it's pretty neat carrying on a conversation with your laptop with something that's seemingly intelligent, and similarly playing with AI that'll help you make retail promotional decisions. Maybe there's interesting things that you can learn, and you can spend your time doing more value added things. And I think collectively, as we define the new ways of working, where the human and the technology are in support of each other, a lot more integrated than they are today. Today, we do a lot of work on laptops and we send emails, and certainly there are business processes in companies. But if we have a more interesting interaction in terms of reviewing what the interesting ideas technology comes up with, I'm reminded of when the AlphaGo played the human Go player, and the human Go player said there was really interesting moves that I couldn't even get my head around. Well, that's some really neat learning that people can glean from this. So there's a lot we can learn from the technology. So I think future of work is safe. I think there ultimately always is a little bit of job replacement, but then there's new types of job creation. I can imagine now in this new world where maybe the roles that we're talking about become a little more technical as the next generation of people come in. We have more technically savvy merchants and category managers as technology becomes a larger part of the job. Similarly, in insurance, as technology becomes a larger part of the job, we're changing the nature of work, keeping in tune with the times as the world evolves and gets more complex and more technical. This is consistent with that. And I think working on new ways of collaborating with the technology, making sure the technology does support people. So yes, there will be some displacement, but I think ultimately a lot of that can be replaced by new types of jobs, new skills, new capabilities. And we should focus on those things as opposed to the fear. And I hope talking more in detail about the opportunities takes some of the fear away. I think the fear comes from this ambiguous AI is going to replace humans. Well, not quite. There is some definite nuance to that. And our belief is that, yes, there will be some job tasks replaced, but not entire jobs. If you look at your job today, I think we need to map out our jobs. Which jobs are purely repetitive that can be automated? Which jobs are kind of half and half? Which jobs are purely strategic? And we can really measure the impact looking at things in a more granular way. So those are some thoughts. Happy to, again, as always, follow up if there's any questions or have a further discussion with those interested. Please subscribe to our YouTube and Spotify channels, and feel free to send comments back and feedback that we can respond to in future podcasts. Thanks so much for joining again.